Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with the Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose. We believe when we approach our work and our lives with a servant's heart, we could truly make a difference. So we created this show so you get impacted by motivation, inspiration, and education, because we want to change your world. And then when you change your world, the bigger world will change. My guest is going to be talking sports and fighting and mindset, which all tie in together to make you a better business person. So you want to get a pad and paper out and take some notes. While you're listening to my guest today, I want you to think about how you're going to serve today and what impact you'll create today. And today's episode is proudly sponsored by incredible partner, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine being part of a very exclusive community, high income, extremely successful business owners and entrepreneurs from very diverse industries. Together, they are building a thought leader expert platform to impact you and to change your world and everybody else's world. If you have any more questions about that, reach out to me and I'll get you all the information about Pantheon Alliance. With that being said, with impact and mindset and all that, I believe sports is a huge teacher and educator when it comes to this. And my guest has been an MMA fighter. He's been in the octagon, as they call it. He's had his butt beaten. He's beaten other people's butts. And I didn't say that because of he did that, but the lessons he's learned from being beaten up and beating other people is going to blow you away. Shane, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, Steve? Glad to be here.
I'm so excited. We met back in June at the Achieve Systems conference, and Havoc mindset caught my eye. I remember we first talked, and love your logo. Tell the audience, Havoc mindset, what does that mean and what you're trying to accomplish?
So, Steve, what Havoc mindset means is it's kind of like this. You know, we all have this havoc in our life, you know, hard situations that have happened. And a lot of us will take those hard situations, our struggles, our havoc, and we'll create these limiting beliefs around those things, right? Like these hard things happen and it tells us, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm not like other people. When in all actuality, you know, those hard situations, if you can learn from those situations and change the way that you look at these situations, right? Have a Havoc mindset, you can actually turn these hard situations into your superpower. You know, I always say all the time, like, our struggles are our superpower. Like, I feel like that's where a lot of our unique talents, qualities, and traits come from, is that hard road that we've been on.
Yeah, that's powerful. What lessons did you learn being a professional fighter?
You know, I would definitely say that I learned how, like, discipline, I learned resilience, but I feel like just learned a lot about myself and how my childhood and the rough, like, you know, life that I had lived had kind of like calloused me and prepared me for that fight career and the rest of my life. I don't know if you know too much about my background, Steve, but, you know, my mom was a drug addict. My father committed suicide when I was 13, and that's kind of when I started smoking and drinking and partying and messing around with different drugs. And then I got addicted to opiates, and that was kind of, you know, I was popping pills. I always had a good work ethic, but I was always popping pills in the background. And eventually, you know, I learned to cut corners and became a drug dealer and just really ran myself into the ground.
That is true havoc. Holy moly.
It was. Yeah, there was a lot of havoc.
A lot of havoc. So you've got, and I always say coaches should have that experience in what they're educating, because as you know, in sports, it's the best teacher in the world is your experience.
It is.
So what was the pivotal thing in your life that changed it?
Like I just talked about earlier, man, I feel like it was changing that story, right? I feel like where we are in our life, our success, the relationships we create is all deeply tied to our self-worth. That story that we're telling ourselves in our head about us and the world around us, what we're capable of, what we're not capable of. And so, for a long time, my story was I'm just a poor kid from the ghetto. I'm a drug addict like my mom. And I honestly justified a lot of bad things that I did because I was dealt this bad hand. So
Yeah.
I would definitely say getting out of that victim stance, that victim mindset, I think that that's probably like one of the biggest curses and traps that we can fall into. Definitely.
So how did you have this servant mindset? Because you're just this spiral. How did you learn to be because we met you. I could tell right away that you're out there bringing value, trying to help people, trying to support and being a servant to them. Where'd that come about? Because that's hard to do when you've been in all this havoc, as we'll use your word.
That's the interesting thing is I actually like noticed that about people that have turned it around, and like people that have been through a lot of struggles and things and have turned it around and turned their mindset around. I feel like it creates a lot of empathy, but I definitely would say that even like in my drug use and in that life, a lot of people still said I had a good heart. I was just doing, stupid things. But yeah, so, by the time I was 25, I was injecting IV. I had multiple overdoses, robbed someone at gunpoint, and then, ended up hitting rock bottom and going to jail and treatment. And I think that that is some of the, once again, like we said, like the biggest teachers, but I think it's also what helps create so much empathy in a human being is going through hell and back, and I think that that is where we can find a lot of our motivation. That's also where we can find a lot of our skills, talents, and traits is through making it in life through these things. If you can pull out the nuggets, right? Like the skills, like how am I unique? One thing I noticed as an MMA fighter is that I was training with all these guys that were been training their whole lives. And I didn't train my whole life except life. I would definitely say, I wrestled in high school, did a little bit of jiu-jitsu. And my buddy had like this little octagon thing in his backyard that we did for like 8 months. And then after that, wrestling was always a part of my childhood. But then after that, it was kind of just drugs and stupidity and kind of life lessons. But then when I became a fighter, and I started training, I started realizing that, I had unique qualities that these other guys didn't have, that might not have been through the rough road that I had been through. They didn't have like the same resilience, that same, grit or, ability to take risk. And I think all these things kind of reflect over into business as well, for sure.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, you having a servant's heart with everything you've been through in your background, I didn't deal with that, any of that. So it tells you, if you're listening going, I don't have his background, we'll learn from Shane. That's why I love this guy. I'm learning from him because I should have a servant's heart because I haven't been through that. You have that servant's heart and you went through a lot of crap, a lot of havoc. So I appreciate you saying that because it's a huge point. In business, how do you relate your fighting to a business owner, a business founder, those type of people? How can you relate with them with what you're doing?
I would definitely say that not quitting, not giving up, teaching them to do the hard things, right? Like I remember, getting in the cage with a guy, a lot of people say that's scary, but I would say that you're doing the same thing in your life every day. Like there's, one thing in my mind, getting into that cage you probably have the same fear around something else that you're doing in business. In your mind, it's all the same. You know what I mean? Like whether you're getting in the cage and fighting somebody or not, that fear is all the same, you know? And so I think I relate in that way. And then I also think that, like, you know, my my life experiences and life experiences with MMA is relatability, you know, like as much as we are all different, we are all also human and the same. And I think that I'm very curious about human beings. So I just love listening to them. I love like getting to know more about them. And I just love the way people tick, you know, like when I say mindset, you know, that's everything. That's everything that you do in your life. It takes mindset. So yeah, I think that although I've been a fighter, a lot of people have been through some other really, really hard things that I couldn't even imagine, you know? So I think we're all human. We're all connected.
You know, it's
Definitely.
interesting. And a coach should be curious about people who should be listening. That's why you're going to be a great and are a great coach. But isn't
Yeah.
it interesting? You probably did that when you were fighting too, that you had to listen to your opponent and learn
Yeah.
about them with your trainers. So you're just taking
Yeah.
that, moving into your business, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, dude. So like one of the things that I think like stand true to me um about coaches is when I was when I got into MMA, like I said, I wasn't trained up like a lot of these other guys. My main attribute was that I was tough and that I could listen to what my coach said. I was like a robot, you know what I mean? And so outside of the cage, like he would yell things. And as a fighter, sometimes when a coach yells a combo, you're like, oh man, there's no way that's going to work. But then you throw it and it lands because he can see the things that you can't see from outside of the cage. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And a lot of times when it's in business and life, you know, you're sitting down with a person asking you the right questions, right? Like that, I think you can't see the label from inside the jar, right? Like that's what I think a lot of people misconceive too about coaches is, you know, people are like, oh, I'm going to go talk to this coach and he's going to give me the tips and the tricks and the you know the way to do it. But honestly, what a coach does, a good coach, is going to ask you the right questions to lead you to the answer. Because how much advice have we gotten in our life that we never listened to, right? Because it's their idea, it's not our idea. But if I can ask you the right questions to lead you to the answer, you're connecting these new neural synapses in your brain to the point where you go, oh, and then you like get it, you understand it, right? To your core, then it sticks, you know? So I think that like all of those things are very true. You know, I don't even know how many times my MMA coach, Will Grunhauser, like wouldn't tell me to pick up my right hand and let me just get clocked. You know what I mean? Like just to teach me a lesson real quick, you know? So looking at these things that happen in our life from those situations as well, you know, there's a lot of business owners that get in there and quit within the first 2 years because they don't see money being created or they don't see the needle quite moving. But that's where you learn that, you know what I mean? Like you gotta live there to grow out of there. Like if you can survive this, what else is going to get thrown your way that you can't survive and you can't, you know, you got to test yourself.
I gotta tell you, audience, what he just said is going to make you $1 million.
Yeah, I
It's
definitely do.
absolutely game changer, and maybe 100,000. You know, depending on what you sell.
Yeah,
That
no, I
matters.
get it though.
Yeah, you get it's $1 million tip. And what's interesting when you're talking about fighting, COVID was one of the biggest fights for businesses, and the
Oh
guys
yeah,
that stood up, throwing the punches, defending, they got hit a few times, maybe got knocked down, got right back up, but they threw a
yeah,
different combination and
yeah,
they won because they pivoted. Like you were talking about your
definitely.
guys, got to
That's
reach out to
true.
this guy. This guy
No,
is
that's
just
true.
amazing.
And honestly, man, like that's crazy you say that. So right before COVID, I got invited down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Because you know, after my my stint in hitting rock bottom, I found MMA and just remembered how much I loved doing it, how much I loved training and doing that as a kid. So the next day I went in and started training MMA like a heroin addict. I started like channeling that addictive, compulsive behavior towards that. And in 5 years, I did a lot in the sport. I feel like in a short period of time, I went to Thailand, trained and fought over there, trained with some of the best fighters in the world, like Gilbert Burns, Alistair Overeem, Robbie Lawler, a lot of great guys. And then like 5 years after that, I ended up getting a really bad concussion in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at this UFC fight camp, and having to retire from MMA. And another hard situation, but I had been training my mind. I've been training my body. I knew where I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when this concussion happened, my back was against the wall too, because that was how I was making all my money, was fighting. I came back to Montana and started a drywall business called The Patch Guy. And, once again, started channeling that same addictive, compulsive behavior towards that. But the reason I bring that up is because that was right before COVID, So I literally started a business at the beginning of COVID, just once again, though, just addicted to grinding and getting it out there. And The Patch Guy was a drywall business. I had been doing drywall my whole life, and it was a patch and remodel business. And so while everybody else was like, kind of pulling back, I was like, this is an opportunity. I put up a billboard. People started getting stimulus checks, and they started, what are they doing? They're in their house looking at the walls. You know what I mean? All the cracks and stuff. And The Patch Guy did 250,000, gross revenue first year, like during COVID, right? Like, people listen to that. Like, when it comes to COVID, when it comes to, any kind of depression or recession, like that's when Pepsi was created. Like, that's when these big things, like, that's your opportunity, right? What do they say? When people are greedy, be fearful. But when people are fearful, be greedy. Like, that's when you want to kick it on, right? So yeah.
That's another $1 million tip. I'm gonna have to start paying you. You keep talking like this. This is so fantastic. You mentioned Lawler and all those other guys as mentors. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I didn't think about it.
I wouldn't say mentors, but I definitely watched them trained with them. Yeah.
Well, they're out. They're not mentors but you looked at how important.
For sure.
Thank you for. Hey, I'm the host. I make mistakes all the time, audience, and that's.
Oh yeah, no, you're good though. No, you're right though. They were mentors.
Talking about that type of, looking at other successful people, how important is that in business?
I definitely think that it's very important. I think, I would not be where I am today without mentors, coaches. So when I was fighting MMA, the city of Billings, Montana was awesome, because like I said, I started voicing my story. I started finding strengths in my story, like the actual story that I had been running from my whole life. I actually found a lot of strength and superpower. So I started telling that story. And then this community of Billings, like the sponsorships that I got and the people that just kind of like came together, the community of people that helped me get to where I was amazing. And what's so cool is a lot of those sponsors then became mentors after I retired from MMA. Like, I had a lot of contractors that I did that sponsored me, and I'm like, I'm doing drywall, right? And I started asking them questions. I started talking to people. But also, Will Grunhauser, my MMA coach, was a huge mentor for me as well. I cannot tell you how many things that came from MMA that I use in life, like kind of like you were talking, like I would not be the person I am, I don't think, today without that. The discipline, one of the very first things my coach, Will Grunhauser, taught me was this. He said, when you first get in the cage, you're tired, right? Like, in the first minute that you're in there, you dump all your adrenaline. By the second round, you sit down on that stool, and in your head, you're like, there's no way I can get up and go back in there. But you do. You get up and you go and you do it. And that is everything that's great in life. Everything that you want that's great in life, That's what it takes. It takes going out there and getting it when you're dead tired, when you know you can't go anymore. Like that's what it's all about, right? And so I definitely think that, like, everybody, like you kind of said, though, is a mentor, honestly. Like, you can learn things from bad people, you can learn things from good people. I teach a lot of my coaching clients to say affirmations to themselves, and I actually use Hitler as a mentor in one of my sayings. I'm like, Hitler said it himself: if you tell somebody a lie long enough, they'll believe it. And I go, that includes you. So you just keep repeating that to yourself over and over again until you believe it, So, yeah.
It's a great point about bad people like Hitler. You can learn from him.
Yeah.
He had
Learn
20
from everybody.
generals. Yeah, amen. Yeah, he had 20 generals. He got his message out. Just 20 people. Well, you
Oh,
find
yeah.
20 generals, your business will blow up.
And
So
don't minimize the people that are like. So when I owned my drywall business, I had this kid that came in. He'd been doing drywall for 2 years. I've been doing drywall for 15 years, and I'm mixing this bucket of mud. It's like this quickset. It sets up real fast. And he goes, if you take that mixing paddle and you hold it underwater off the ground, off the bottom, and you hit it with a hammer, he's like, that stuff will just fall right off. And I'm like, no way. And he's like, $10. You bet me $10. And this kid was right? I learned something from a 2-year guy, so like everybody, you can learn from everybody.
oh yeah, I'm 50 years older than you, and I'm learning from you today. I'm not 50. What am I saying? But that's so. My big question I've been excited to ask: what gets you out of bed these last 10 years after all this havoc? You have havoc today. We all do.
Yeah.
But how you get out of bed?
Okay, so first I'll explain what gets me out of bed, like my motivation, and then I'll explain, if you want, my morning routine, because I think that that's a huge part of my day. So that's like how I get out of bed, I'd say. But my motivation, man, and okay, so this is actually my why too. This is like my why around, I think, a lot that lit underneath me. Like halfway through my MMA career, I found that I was inspiring people because of my story and everything like that. Well, then, after my MMA career, my mom had moved up here with us. And like I said, she was a drug addict my whole life, and she was dying of cancer. And she came to live with us, with my kids, so she could spend time with the kids. And the last 5 years or 5 days of her life, she was so regretful, so unfulfilled with the life she lived, wished that she could go back and do it again, and like not have all these things happen to me and my sister and all this stuff, right? And I feel like that was the moment. It was sad, it was crushing, it was heartbreaking, but it also like lit something inside me where I was like, man, I don't want anybody I love or anybody I know to have to go through that, And so I would say my why, what gets me out of bed in the morning, is who am I not going to impact? You know what I mean? And then I think it's a ripple effect from there, because like my kids don't see me get out of bed, like it just starts rippling into it. I have people, a whole community of people that come to my kava bar every single day. When is there going to be someone that walks in there that needs help, that wants to try to quit drinking or something that I'm not there for? What if I don't impact them today? You know what I mean? So like, yep. I would say that that's my motivation and my why. And I think that's one of the most important things for anybody. Like, yes, find what you're passionate about, find what you want to do, but then find why you want to do it. And when I say why, I mean the stuff that's in the past, your childhood, what happened with your parents, like all of that stuff. That's what is creating your why. And that why, that's the difference between getting, like you just said, getting out of bed and not getting out of bed. I had a coaching client one time, and he came in, he was like, I want to make $100,000. And I was like, all right, why do you want to make $100,000? He's like, well, I'd like to take my kids traveling. Like, I've never had $100,000. I really want to buy this. I want to buy that. That guy's not going to make $100,000. He's just not going to get it. If he's never done 100,000, he's not going to do it. Not with that, right? So then after coaching him and asking him questions, and really just, prying it out of him, I learned that, his mom had been taking care of him and his 3 brothers and 1 sister like their whole life, right? And he wants to buy her a house. Like, she's never owned a house. Now that's a strong why, right? I had another guy that was like, my ex has the custody of my kids and she lives in a slummy neighborhood, and I want to try to make enough money to put a down payment on a lawyer, buy a house in a good neighborhood so my kids aren't in danger. Like that's a strong why, right? Like you got to find that. You got to find what, like you said, what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Amen. That's the why and purpose is another $1 million. We get $3 million you put out there. The universe is talking. That's beautiful. Real quick, we're coming to the end. What's your your morning routine?
Oh yeah. So and I've been doing this for probably about 6-7 years. MMA definitely helped me with my morning routine because I always told myself, is my opponent training right now? Is he up before me? Is he training before me? Mike Tyson talks a lot about that. But I also feel like you will learn a lot about yourself in the early morning time. Like it's dark outside, nobody else is awake, and you're doing things for you, right? So first thing I do when I wake up is I go and I drink a bunch of water, take my vitamins, I read a book, and after that I brush my teeth. And when I brush my teeth, I look myself in the mirror and I tell myself affirmations. I am successful. I am patient. I am present. I am growing every day. I am strong. I'm raising my kids with self-love, like just all of those things I tell myself. If you don't know affirmations very well, I think that the best one that I've ever given, because it works for anybody, a lot of times when you're looking yourself in the mirror, you'll be like, that's bullshit, or like, you're not believing it, right? So what you do is you say, I'm proud of you. You've come a long way, because that always sticks and it makes you feel good about yourself. And then I'll journal for a little bit, like write what I'm grateful for. And, when I say journaling, it's not like a Dear Diary journaling. It's more asking myself those hard questions, right? Like, I think I've said this before too, but your brain is like a supercomputer. So if you ask it a question, it's going to try to solve the answer. It might take a while, but ask yourself those really hard questions. Like, why do you blow up when this happens? Why have you not started that business yet? What's your money mindset look like? I think all those things are very important things. And then I drive to the gym. And then on my way to the gym, I'm once again in the truck driving like a crazy person, but telling myself affirmations. People look at me like I'm nuts because I'm talking to myself, but I do a lot of talking to myself in the morning, just kind of priming myself and prepping myself for the day, And then when I get to the gym, I meditate for about 10 minutes in the sauna, kind of like a mindful meditation, trying to focus on my breath, trying to kind of not attach to the thoughts that are coming and just sit with some quiet time and some headphones in. And then I lift weights. And while I lift weights, once again, I don't count. I look myself in the mirror and I tell myself affirmations. There's a lot of science. Tony Robbins talks about it with like movement and repeating affirmations when it comes to the brain. It's all science. And then after that, I'll go into the steam room and I lay down in the steam room and I try to visualize my day. I try to visualize myself, going through my day and it succeeding the way I want it to succeed. And then I visualize something from the future. I visualize myself on stage and I'm trying to like feel what it would feel like to be on stage, like feel that nervousness and feel the sweat on the palms of my hands. And then I do a cold shower and then ready for the day, man. And that's kind of been my morning routine for quite a while. That's about 4 or 5 days a week. If I'm at home, like I don't go to the gym, I do something a little bit different. On Saturday and Sunday, I'm a little more relaxed, just kind of like chill and drink some tea and yeah.
Hang out with the family. Well, you just gave a great playbook and, take pieces of it, all of it. You guys that are in the audience and girls run with it. Again, to each his own, but the key is affirmations. That's the key.
It is, man. Oh yeah, I think so too. And even the gym, the meditation, like all of these things are confirming you to be 1% better every day. Like if that's what you're going for, do that. Do 1 or 2 of them, and then a week later add 1 or 2 more, and then a week later add 1 or 2 more. And I guarantee you it'll change your life. Like your success is all deeply tied to your habits, what you're doing on a daily basis.
I can admit that so heartily because it's changed my life the last year and a half, doing some of the things, especially reading,
Yeah,
which I didn't do. We come to the end here, man. That time flew. I knew it would with you. We
it's
connected
all
right
right.
away when we first met. It's great. I'm going to bring you back for part two because there's
We
much more
will.
we can cover. Let's have a fun question. So
Yeah.
you're getting a reservation at a restaurant. It's Saturday, so you're not have your busy day. It's a relaxed day. You're sitting in one chair, the other three empty chairs, dead or alive. Who would you invite? Why would you invite them? And what food would you order?
Holy smokes.
I love that response.
Okay, so one of them is going to be my dad, which is crazy because like my dad wasn't around when I was 2, and he committed suicide when I was 13, and I think came to a lot of peace from it. So I just have a lot of questions. But he also was like this, like he was a businessman, right? He was into a legal business, but he was a businessman too. So a lot of questions for him. The other one I would say Muhammad Ali, like a fresh Muhammad Ali, would be another one of them. And the last one, it kind of man, it's hard just to pick 3. It's hard. There's so many people I would love to sit down with, and I think that that's what it is. I'm like measuring. I'm measuring who.
And that happens. That's okay.
But I would definitely say, have you ever heard of Alex Hormozy?
Oh yeah, I'm
Love that
actually.
guy.
I might be working with
Yeah.
him, so that's
Really? That's
yeah.
awesome.
We'll talk. We'll talk later. But that's a him and his wife are rock stars.
Dude, they are rock stars. Yeah, I would love to sit. I mean, if I could get with both of them, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no,
You
no.
know,
Hey,
like
well,
sit down with
we'll
both of
just
them.
add an extra chair. Bring his wife.
Yeah,
Make it
yeah,
5. It's your table.
right.
You can do what you want. So what are they going to be eating?
Oh, what are they going to be eating? Steak, man, steak. Some ribeye. I think ribeye. You know, ribeye, sweet potatoes, and some asparagus. That would
Okay,
be my dream.
we need a 6th chair because I've got to be part of that table. Not
Yeah,
just because of the food, but the group. Well,
yeah. I know.
Shane, I want to thank you so much. This has been an unbelievable show. Knew it would
Thank
be,
you,
but I
buddy.
really came through 1,000,000%. How can people reach out to you, connect with you, or support you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Shane Havoc Mindset. You can go to my website, havocmindset.com. If you're interested in having me doing any kind of public speaking, motivational speaking, I've been really blowing up on that. I just did like a really big workshop to Rimrock Dentistry, which is a huge dentist office. Well, they have like 5 offices, and did like a workshop with them. That's Havoc Mindset /media kit. And yeah, my TikToks, once again, Shane Havoc Mindset. You can always reach me on Facebook at Shane Fichter, and Fichter is spelled Fichter. Crazy thing is it's spelled like fighter if you took the G out and replaced it with a C. Complete coincidence, obviously. But yeah, definitely think that I've had to fight my way through this whole life. So,
Amen to that.
but everybody is.
And
Everybody
real
is.
quick, you have a workshop too. 30
Yeah,
seconds. What's the workshop?
Yeah. So anybody who is interested in group coaching, we have a great group coaching course that we've ran a couple times, and it is a whole community of business owners, some that own brick and mortar, some that don't own brick and mortar, some that are just investors. I have a guy that has made 12 million in crypto. Like, he's a part of this group, and we will be launching that in the next month. So if you can just like watch my social media, I don't have like a set date for it, but we will have early signups in about a week. And it's called the Academy of Hard Knocks. It's an all-in-one evergreen group coaching course where you get a 12-week course that's going to help you find your passion, your mission, what helps you tick those unique qualities about yourself, changing your perception around those things that have happened in your life and turning your struggles into a superpower. We do 2 calls a week. We also you get 3 one-on-one sessions with me. So you get one at the beginning, and you get to pick the second one and then one at the end. And we always, add an extra one if you think that you need an extra one-on-one session. So definitely, it's probably one of the most impactful groups that I've done thus far. It's been amazing.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
great. On the YouTube
Appreciate
channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I ask you to do that because you can reach out to Shane. Listen to him again, because a lot of times I get feedback from people that watch a podcast or listen to it and miss something. Well, when you subscribe, you can go right back to it and listen to his show over and over again, and also comment on it. If you got a comment for Shane, I'll get it to him. Just put it in there, comment or critique the show. Love your critique, good or bad, doesn't matter. But let me know, because I want to make this better, because it's all about you, the audience, and having a great guest like Shane always makes it much a better show. And as always, me and Shane want to thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.